Since 1977, through hundreds of players, nearly a dozen head coaches, and 3 owners, Merrill Reese has called Eagles football. Heading into his 48th season, Reese won the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award. A representative of the Hall of Fame called Reese while he was in his car and asked him to pull over.
And he's told me, he said, congratulations, you're going into the NFL Hall of Fame. You're the 2024 winner of the Pete Rozelle Award. And Mark, all I did was cry.
We'll talk about the tears and all the years with Merrill Reese next on Fresh 24. Merrill Allen Reese, Overbrook High School. I know you don't use Allen much, but we do. We use middle names here.
Okay.
Overbrook High School, Temple University. Currently the longest serving play-by-play announcer in the NFL. This is going to be season number 48 coming up. Multiple awards, multiple halls of fame. This is unreal. Named by the Pro Football Hall of Fame as the winner of the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award. And I got to give it to you straight and go verbatim here. On Sunday, February 4th, 2018, you uttered the words that will live in the hearts of Eagles fans forever. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin. Let us begin, Merrill Reese. Welcome to Fresh 24.
Thank you. I'm fresh, and I'm more than 24.
Merrill, I watched the video of the final call. You obviously didn't script it, but you did take a moment where you sort of like held up your hands. Like, okay, everybody, whatever your commotion is, whatever your celebratory, whatever is going to be, cool it, because we have to capture the moment. You held up your hands. In your words, why did you do it?
I didn't know I did.
How about that?
That I didn't realize that I held up my hands. It definitely wasn't to shut everybody up, because a couple things about that. Paul Domwich did a story for the Inquirer the week before, Inquirer and the Daily News, and he said, if the Eagles win, are you going to have something that you will write down a couple of sentences because it's going to live forever? And I said, no. I said, I don't want to do that. Some people do, as you know, but I don't want to do that because I want it to come. And he said, that's fair enough. And the fact of the matter is, for many years, Mark, I would be a guest from time to time with Angelo Cataldi on the morning show. And he would say, you know, I really want the Eagles to win a Super Bowl for you, because you've been through so much with this team for so many years. And my answer was, and it was not disingenuous, my answer was, I want them to win it for the fans. I've had miracles in the Meadowlands. I've had great plays. I've been to Super Bowls. I've been around some great people. I said, these fans, there are fans who get second mortgages to buy season tickets. There are fans who spend their last dollars over Christmas to buy their kids' Eagles jerseys, memorabilia. It's for them. And so when that moment came, that's what came out of my mouth. That's all I could think about, that all of these fans finally had their Super Bowl. Yeah, it meant a lot to me. I loved it, but it was their Super Bowl, and that's what came out. As far as the hands being up, it was probably an emotional gesture, but I knew that Mike Quick said to me before, if no matter how this ends, I'll give you the beat and I won't jump you on that. And I said, great. And that's the way it worked out. And then he went on with his reaction.
I was in Minneapolis. My reaction was disbelief. I never thought the Eagles would win a Super Bowl in my lifetime. Did you ever think that thought?
Yes, yes, I did. I thought they were getting close, and I thought they had a. Well, I thought they had a chance that day. I thought they were the better team. I thought they would beat New England, although I had no great confidence. But I thought they were the better team, and unfortunately, I also felt that way 2 years ago when they lost to Kansas City. I thought they were the better team in Arizona that day, but they blew it at the end.
Did you prepare any differently for Super Bowl 52?
No, not any differently than I do for a pre. Well, but you know what, Mark? The toughest games to prepare for are the preseason games,
Hmm.
because for the preseason games you have a roster that looks like this. By the time you get to the Super Bowl, I've seen that opponent 6 or 7 times. I know a million stories about their players. I practically know their players as well as the, the, the announcer of the Patriots that year, or the Chiefs, and they probably know the Eagles as well as I do in terms of player recognition. I mean, we all know idiosyncrasies and we all know stories, but I know those numbers point blank, and I know what to look for, and I've seen that offense 100 times. You're going to do a preseason game, and by the way, this is a theory of mine. When people sometimes say to me, "Boy, you really make a game exciting," I say thank you and go on. But I don't ever want to make a game exciting. I really don't. I want to convey excitement when it belongs. I don't want to make a game exciting. I have an obligation as a broadcaster to keep a broadcast interesting, not to make a game exciting because that cheapens the exciting moments. So that's what I try to convey. So
And
I'm far more. I'm nervous before every game. I've never done a game that I'm not nervous going into, where I feel the jumpiness in my stomach. I can't eat once I get to the stadium. Cindy makes me a stack of pancakes, or I have a stack of pancakes at the hotel, because once we're on the air, once I get to that stadium, until Joe McPeak, boom, hits me on the back and I go, and then it all goes away. Then I'm in a zone. But until he does that, I feel a lot of nerves. So I don't. Mike Quick can eat right through a broadcast, by the way. But I am very nervous going into a game, and it doesn't matter if it's preseason game number one in Baltimore or the biggest game of my life.
yeah, my theory, and you've done a million games, I did a million games. My theory has always been it's like the horse that's waiting to race in the Kentucky Derby, and the horse knows what's coming, but the horse is trapped in, those little starting gates until they're released and the bell goes off and they go. Same thing, I think, and you pretty much just described it. You're nervous because your body is getting you ready to do your thing. You have to be on, you have to perform. And then once Joe McPeak hits you in the back, you're good.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the way I used to feel going into a final exam in college, except that except I that half the time then was because I didn't think I studied enough. Now I
Right.
know I've studied.
Merrill, journeys, I should say, are fascinating. How prominent people like you got to where they are today. And we'll talk more later in the podcast about that. But first, I think viewers and listeners would appreciate what it is that you do and how you do it. You have this routine leading up to a game you've employed much of your career. Give us Sunday, the previous Sunday, you're done, you're going home until Joe McPeak hits you on the back and says, go.
Well, I get into the plane if we're on the road, and I will take out my iPad and start checking out the next opponent,
Hmm.
and also check on everything going on around the league. If it's a home game, I will drive home, and the first thing I do when I come in the door is watch the remaining games. I never miss the 4 o'clock game if we had a 1 o'clock game, or if we had a 4 o'clock game. I want to see the rest of Sunday night football. I'm a fan. I love football. I love NFL football. I love college football. I might see 6 college football games in a week. That's how much I love college football. And
Is
and
Cindy is Cindy your wife there with you the whole time watching too, or does she ever say, Merrill, haven't you had enough?
no, She doesn't. She understands that that's what she's there to greet me, and we'll talk about the game and maybe a little about the broadcast, and then she'll give me my pizza, and I'll watch the Sunday night game.
Wow, pancakes in the morning and pizza at night. Okay, so Monday comes, Tuesday, Wednesday. What's your routine leading up to the following Sunday?
I'm at NovaCare during the week. I generally attend the various press conferences they have in the auditorium. I go into the locker room in the limited time that's granted to us. I will go out on the field, although these days you're only allowed to see a very limited portion of practice. And then I will go home. On Monday night, I watch Monday Night Football, and Thursday night, I watch Thursday Night Football. I don't care if I have a show or a speech, although I keep my speeches to a minimum during the season. I will sit down at night and watch end zone offense and end zone defense of the upcoming opponent. I will call people that I know around the league who have inside knowledge of the upcoming opponent. It may be a broadcaster like Brad Sham, who does the Cowboys, who maybe the Cowboys played that team in the last 2 weeks. And I have a whole network, Mark, of coaches, because when you've been doing the games for the past 47 years, you know so many coaches around the league who were assistants at one point, and they'll talk to me and give me knowledge that I take into a game. But I do that pretty much every week. Friday night we go out with friends to Phil's Tavern in Bluebell. Generally, my good friends George and Mickey Forster. George is a golf pro, and when we just have a casual dinner. Saturday night, I get up and watch college football. Before I go to bed on Saturday night, I sit down for about maybe a half hour and give myself a run through. Sunday morning, I get up. I used to take my famous bath that people talked about, where I would lie in the bathtub and envision the plays and envision the numbers, but I've grown past the bath. But I will lie back in a comfortable chair and just envision the numbers of the opposition and plays taking place. Because once you get to game day, and there's Mike Quick on my right, and there's Billy Werndale, who's my spotter, and then there's Terry Small, who's my statistician. And as you've seen on the Merrill cams, Joe McPeak is constantly handing me cards of things to, commercial reads, what they call them drop-ins during the game. And all this is going on, and there's a crowd screaming. You want to be focused. And so I can focus by doing this psycho-cybernetics drill at home before I leave for the stadium, or in the hotel room before I leave for the stadium. Now, I learned that. It was a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by a guy by the name of Maxwell Maltz. And I talked about that, and I learned that years and years ago with Billie Jean King, who I did the Freedoms tennis matches, and Billie Jean and I became really good friends. And she used to tell me that before she went to Wimbledon, she would sit back in a darkened room and just relax. And she would conjure up in her mind the smell of the grass courts, the sound of the crowd, the atmosphere, and she would envision herself winning point after point after point. So the whole theory is that our brain is a computer, and what our brain imagines works the same as actually doing it in terms of our frame of reference and our comfort level at the time of the broadcast or at the time of the sport. Unfortunately, I practice myself visualizing myself making putt after putt after putt, and then I go out there and miss 2-footers.
Yeah, by now you know it. I'm retired. That's the good news. The bad news is I don't get into NBA games for free anymore, let alone the NBA Finals. But the good news is I use Game Time to get into the NBA Finals or dozens of other events. Why? Well, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. It's easy. It's fast. The closer you get to game time, the cheaper the seats are. And listen, it's not just about the NBA Finals. Wouldn't that be great to go to, by the way? But listen to this. Concerts like Adele, Pearl Jam, Billy Joel, The Stones, George Strait, The Boss, Bruce Springsteen, Pink. It goes on and on. And now I got to give you the official stuff here. You can not only take the guesswork out of getting tickets for the NBA Finals with Game Time, you could simply download the Game Time app. You create an account. Oh, and use the code ZOO, Z-O-O, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, the redemption code, and I'll spell it out for you. It's Z-O-O, ZOO, and get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets from Game Time and the lowest prices guaranteed. You mentioned the Philadelphia Freedoms. You've done other sports, I know. You've done Big Five basketball, if I recall, right? Didn't you?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I don't know when I was at Temple. I don't know by the time you got there, but when I was at Temple, we had a permanent line at the Palestra, so that we didn't just do Temple. I did the doubleheader, whoever was playing on Wednesday nights. I did the Penn Ivy League game on Friday nights. I did the doubleheader on Saturday nights. In fact, one Saturday afternoon in March, I went to the Palestra and did a public league triple header playoffs, and then went over to Pagano's. I can remember I had spaghetti and clam sauce, and then came back and did a doubleheader, a Big Five doubleheader at night. 5 games in one day.
Do you have time to follow other sports, the Sixers, for example?
Oh, sure. I watch the Sixers. I rarely miss a Phillies game. One of my favorite things in the summer is to play golf during the day, come home, go into our family room, cuddle up in my comfortable chair and watch the Phillies every night, of course.
Any thoughts about the Sixers, the kind of year they had last year, what they did in the offseason, and what you think might happen this coming year?
I think they're a good team. I think they're exciting. I think Embiid is amazing. I love, like everybody else, I love Tyrese Maxey. I think they've made some very good pickups. I think they're going to be another very, very competitive team. By the way, did you see Clipped? The TV series Clipped?
Unfortunately, I did not.
Do you know about it?
I don't. Please acquaint me.
Oh, it's 6 episodes on the story of Donald Sterling. And
right, I did read about this being made. Yes, I haven't seen it.
I wanted to know what you thought with Lawrence Fishburne playing Doc Rivers. Now, I've never met Doc Rivers, but Lawrence Fishburne as Doc Rivers was exactly how I envisioned Doc Rivers to be.
Right. You know what? I remember all the memes that were coming out when they casted Lawrence Fishburne and they showed some video of him. I'll watch it and get back to you.
Okay.
Merrill, you were named by the Pro Football Hall of Fame as this year's winner of the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award. That award has been given out since 1989. I think I could count on the fingers of one hand the number of local broadcasters who have won the award. To this point, it's largely been network talent or network TV executives, that sort of thing. What does it mean to you to be in this sort of company?
It means a lot. It really is a wonderful feeling. You know, I was driving out. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was driving out to the golf course, and all of a sudden the phone rang in my car, and I looked at the screen, and it said Canton, Ohio. And I didn't even think of the Hall of Fame. My thought when I saw Canton, Ohio was, I don't know anybody in Canton, Ohio. But I answered the phone, and the gentleman said, Merrill, this is Jim Porter, the president of the Hall of Fame. Are you driving? And I said, yes. And he said, would you mind pulling over? And I got off at Lancaster Avenue near Villanova, and I pulled over to the side, and he told me, he said, congratulations, you're going into the NFL Hall of Fame. You're the 2024 winner of the Pete Rozelle Award. And Mark, all I did was cry. I love it.
Oh, wow.
And it hit me so hard. Because when Jeffrey Lurie called me in 2016 to tell me that I was going into the Eagles Hall of Fame, I laughed. I was happy. I was responsive like a normal person, but it didn't totally shock me. I mean, I had been doing the game for 100 years, and I figured eventually something would happen. But here I am in a situation where I never even, that wasn't even on my bucket list, the NFL Hall of Fame. I never thought that it was something that could even possibly happen because, as you said, there were two announcers. One wasn't even a play-by-play guy. One was Myron Cope, who was the character colored man with the terrible towel in Pittsburgh. And the other was Van Miller, who did the games in Buffalo 40 years ago. So I never even thought about that. So it wasn't even, and when he told me that, I cried. And then he said to me, he said, I'd like you to not say anything to anybody but your wife because we're going to announce it tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. And so I went out and I called Cindy right away. And when she picked up the phone, again, I started to cry. And she said, "Are you okay? Were you in an accident?" And I said, "No, Hall of Fame." I had to calm her down. So the next thing I did is I met my friends and I played golf. And I couldn't tell them, three really close friends, we played golf. And I had a really good round. So the next day, I went out to Downingtown to play because I was chairperson of a charity called Canine Partners that raises money for assistance dogs. And I knew it would break at 11 o'clock. And they told me to make sure that I have a phone and with me. And I did. And then the calls started coming in. And there were 4 TV crews out there at various holes that day to do interviews. I must have shot 200. I mean, I couldn't concentrate on a thing. And I got over 1,000 calls, including I got a call or a text from every one of the other 31 NFL play-by-play men, and including the network guys. I mean, my friends, Jim Nance and Joe Buck, and they were unbelievable.
And so after hearing all of that, people are wondering, how did he become Merrill Reese? How did he get the job? And we're going to get into that. But first, it is now halftime, Merrill. I know you're familiar with halftime. And the first part of our halftime is the Garage Beer 6-pack of questions. It is brought to you by Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. By the way, the Kelsey brothers, very involved in Garage Beer. Okay. I'll give you a choice between 2 things. You just blurt out your preference, your answer. Don't think about it. We're going quick here. You ready?
Ready.
Cheesesteak or soft pretzel?
Soft pretzel.
Center City or South Jersey?
South Jersey.
Gritty or Philly Fanatic?
Philly Fanatic.
Meek Mill or Hall & Oates?
Hall & Oates.
Dr. J or Allen Iverson throwback?
Dr. J.
Liberty Bell or Rocky Steps?
Liberty Bell.
The 6-pack of questions brought to you by Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. Quickly, Merrill, a handful of artists from my music library. You tell me if you have them or not. And are you ready?
I am ready.
Frank Sinatra.
Of course.
Miles Davis.
No.
The Beatles.
Yes.
Coldplay.
No.
Fleetwood Mac.
No.
Any favorite artists? I know you say you listen to music all the time in the car, right?
I do. There's a lot of favorite artists. I mean, if you're talking about the jazz, the old time jazz people. I mean, Frank Sinatra, who I think was the greatest male vocalist of all time, and Ella Fitzgerald, who I thought
the greatest, period, any genre.
Yeah, so Ella Fitzgerald would certainly be one. But there's a lot that I loved. I mean, I loved the music of the 50s and the 60s. I loved the Platters. I loved, I loved Elvis. I loved Connie Francis. I loved a lot of those artists at that time. But I also like jazz. I do like jazz, old and new. I I do like, believe it or not, I do like I like some country, but I like bluegrass. I will occasionally turn to the bluegrass station. I love the tradition of the bluegrass with the banjos and the but I do like bluegrass. I like some show music. Cindy and I will go to a show from time to
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
A lot, but I do like show music. We're going to see Funny Girl Saturday night at
Oh,
the
it's great. I saw the revival on Broadway. It was awesome.
yeah. I can't wait to see it. So
Yeah.
I have a wide spectrum of music, but I do like the popular music. I'm not one who's grown up on the hard rock type of things, but I can certainly love the Rolling Stones. Who doesn't
Mm.
love the Rolling Stones? I think they're amazing. So I have a big list of people that I love.
Merrill, when I was a kid, I used to turn the sound down of the TV and do games into a tape recorder. Did you do the same?
Nope.
How did
No,
you get started?
I was out playing. I was always out playing games, and I didn't broadcast them. Then I never turned down the sound, and I would turn down the sound to listen to Bill Campbell,
Mm.
things like that. And but I was not somebody who um, pretended to broadcast a game or practice broadcasting a game. I that wasn't it. But here, I'll give you something I did do that was probably a, a lot in my background. My mother was a kindergarten teacher, and she had that showbiz flair, and she going through college, she had dancing school, and she just had that. And so my sister and I were taken around at an early age for some dramatic lessons and singing lessons and stuff like that. And by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I was doing television commercials. And most of them were live for Silver
Mm.
Milk, for Lummus Peanut Butter, for Ranger Joe Cereal. So between the ages of 8 and 12, I was doing a lot of live stuff. I did some radio drama in those days where I would have to memorize because they didn't want a little boy reading. They had me memorize a 26-page script and come
Oh
out
my
do it on
goodness.
Sunday morning. Yeah, I did. As a little kid at 6, 7 years old, memorized. My mom would sit with me after school and go over the lines with me. So I
That-
did that. But I didn't love it. I did it because that's what I did. And I made a lot of money doing that. I did a lot of money. I was the kid who on the show with Gene Crane called M&M's Candy Carnival. Every Sunday it began at the convention hall. I looked through a knothole and then turned to the camera and said, "Hey kids, it's time for M&M's Candy Carnival." And then they gave my parents a check for $37.50, and I could go home. So, I made a couple of dollars, for college that way. But I did a lot of that stuff until I was about 12. But that was never my goal, was to be a broadcaster. My goal was to be the quarterback. I wanted to be the quarterback, Mark. I wanted to be the guy who made the 1-and-1 at the end of the game. And then I got into tennis. I wanted to be the guy who served an ace on match point. That's what I want. I wanted to play. And it wasn't until I realized that I'm not going anywhere with a racket or a basketball or pitching a no-hitter. None of that's going to happen. And I'm certainly not going to throw a touchdown pass to win the Super Bowl. And then I said, well, what's next? And from the time I was a little boy, I'm talking 3, 4 years old, I could sit next to the radio and listen to a whole Phillies game. I could probably listen to a doubleheader. And that I did. And I listened to Penn football in those days. And then my parents took me out to Franklin Field. And in those days, Penn would draw 60,000 fans to Franklin Field, and the Eagles would draw 14,000 the next day at Connie Mack Stadium, or at that time it was called Shibe Park. So, but when I went into that stadium, I was riveted. I got goosebumps. And the sound of the crowd. Football was always my favorite, but I loved the Phillies and I loved the Warriors. I was never raised on hockey because the Flyers didn't come until much later. They had the Ramblers at the old arena, but I didn't know anything about that. But football, baseball, and basketball, boy, to me that was it.
Merrill, I'm going to go quickly through your stellar career for the sake of time here. Overbrook High School, as I mentioned, Temple University, small town Pennsylvania radio, news and sports and Philly radio, including WIP. There, you became the backup for the station's sports director, Charlie Swift. You started to do some pre- and post-game shows for the Eagles. Later, you did color commentary. And then December 7th, 1977 came. What happened then?
That was the day that Charlie Swift passed away, actually took his own life. And I was working at WWDB at the time, doing pre and post game Eagles shows. And that year I had moved into the color job. Al Pollard had retired, and I moved into the booth doing color, which is unusual for a non-former Flyer. But I did the color that year and worked hard at it. And then I would go in and do the morning sports, and the disc jockey would call me at 4:30 in the morning and wake me, and I'd run into DB and we had a whole morning show. And that day my alarm went off, and not my alarm, the phone went off, and I looked at the clock. It's 2:30 in the morning, and the voice on the phone said, "Merrill, this is Tim Early, who was a friend of Charlie's," and he gave me the chilling news that Charlie was gone. And I went into WWDB, and I did a whole eulogy about Charlie Swift on the air. And we didn't have cell phones in 77, but when the switchboard opened at 9 o'clock, it was Dean Tyler, the program director of WIP. And he said, "Merrill, you're doing the play-by-play on Sunday. Go get a color analyst." And I had WHAT and WWDB were together. They were co-owned in the same building. And WHAT was a black rhythm and blues station with disc jockeys who were famous in the area, like Sonny Hobson, and a lot of the athletes used to hang out and come into the studio, and I got to know them. I was very good friends with Richie Allen. I got to know Richie Allen a lot, really well. And another one who I became very, very good friends with was the former great defensive back, Hall of Famer with the Green Bay Packers, Herb Adderley. So I called Herb Adderley and I said, "Can you do the color Sunday?" And Herb said, "I'm there." And so we did the Eagles and the Giants that Sunday. And the following Sunday, we did the Eagles and the Jets, both home games, of course, with no guarantees. And the following March, after I went crazy for all those months, wondering whether I was going to be it. And by the way, I was probably the third choice. They hired me at WIP to do the play-by-play, and I've been doing it ever since.
You look great. You sound great. What keeps you going?
It's what I love to, Mark. It's what I love to do more than anything else in the world. You know how much I love to play golf, and that would be 1A. But number one, by a clear choice, would be to sit in that booth and broadcast NFL football, and especially the team I've loved since the time I grew up. I mean, I had opportunities to move to the networks and do television. Fortunately, WIP made made the decisions easy by rewarding me the way I felt was very, very fair. But it's what keeps me. I love it more than anything else in the world. When I'm on the air doing a game, I'm in another world. There's nothing I'd rather do, and I'm fortunate. I have no plans to retire. I mean, people say, "Well, in a couple of years it'll be your 50th." I don't care. I want to do it until a crane comes up and grabs me and yanks me out of the booth. I want to do it as long as I'm physically able to do it. Like you, I'm very careful about working out, eating the right foods, not doing anything that's going to hurt my voice. I try to be careful. And I want to do this as long as I can possibly do it because it's what I enjoy doing more than anything else in the world. And the thing that makes it even more worthwhile is we get to broadcast in front of the most passionate fans in the entire sports world.
Merrill, I always say this to you. Long may you wave, my friend. Congrats on the Roselle Award. Keep on keeping on. And thank you so much for joining us on Fresh 24.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Fresh 24. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our friends over at Philadelphia Sports Nation, a local Philadelphia sports site covering your favorite teams across blogs and social media. PHLSportsNation.com. Philadelphia Sports Nation, PHL Sports Nation, enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience.